Hello students, today I am going to talk to you about the Tughluq dynasty c. 1320 to 1414 CE. From the time of its foundation towards the close of the 12th century, the polity of the Delhi Sultanate had been adjusting to strong centrifugal forces. Distant areas like Bengal, the Deccan, and further south showed a minimum allegiance towards the central authority. Apart from this, there was considerable pressure created by the possibility of Mongol attack coming from the northwestern sector. While combating with such disruptive forces, the Sultanate developed its own identity and left its mark on the history of medieval India. The Tughluqs were the longest ruling dynasty of the Sultanate, who ruled over a period from 1320 to 1414 CE. Coming to the origin of this dynasty, it appears from the book Tughluq Nama written by Amir Khusru that the term Tughluq was actually a personal name rather than being the name of a specific tribe. The first and the second king of this dynasty, according to Tughluq Nama, called themselves Sultan Tughluq and Sultan Muhammad. This has been confirmed by several coins and inscriptions. Not only that, later on, Firoz Shah and his descendants also did not much use the coinage of Tughluq. In this context, if we follow Tughluq Nama, it would be incorrect to identify Ghiyasuddin Tughluq and his descendants to belong to the tribe of Tughluqs. However, there are several other opinions regarding these origins, and there are lots of controversies too among the historians. It has been stated by Ibn Battuta that the Tughluqs belong to the Karavan tribe of the Turks and they resided in the area located between Sindh and Turkestan. However, Battuta's interpretation has also not been accepted by all historians. It has been pointed out by Marco Polo that regarding this tribe, the father was a Tatar and the mother happened to be an Indian. Farista, after inquiring at Lahore about the origin of Ghiyasuddin Tughluq, found that Ghiyasuddin worked as a slave under Balban and his mother belonged to a local Jat family. Some other sources, however, point out that the Karauna was a tribe among the Mongols. It is difficult to come to a conclusion as to whether Ghiyasuddin belonged to this Karauna tribe. His negative attitude towards the Mongols particularly make it somewhat doubtful that he had any linkage with a Mongol tribe. Tughluq Nama does not mention the place from where Ghiyasuddin came. It also does not mention that Ghiyasuddin arrived from any foreign place. So, under these kind of discussions, one can arrive at the conclusion that the origin of the Tughluqs is quite controversial. Coming to Ghiyasuddin Tughluq and his ascendancy to the throne, the nobles of Delhi invited Ghazi Malik, who later came to be known as Ghiyasuddin Tughluq after coming to power, who was then the governor of Punjab under the Khilji dynasty. He was invited to oust Khusro Khan, who had come to power by massacring the members of the Khalji family. In 1320, an attack was launched by Ghiyasuddin, or we may also call him Ghazi Malik at this stage, with the help of a force consisting of the Khokar tribesmen, and Khusro Khan was killed. Ghazi Malik, now renamed Ghiyasuddin Tughluq, ascended the throne after quite some hesitations. He formed a government where he inducted his friends and his family members. Following the tradition of Balban, he gave high titles to his sons. Ghiyasuddin Tughluq, however, faced several problems at his ascendancy. Number one, changes in the government after Alauddin Khilji's death created problems in different parts of the empire. There was a tendency to disintegrate. Secondly, the king of Sindh had declared independence. Gujarat saw a lot of trouble. The Rajput leaders were constantly threatening with several challenges. Bengal was facing internal strifes. Mithila and Orissa were under Hindu kings, and Delhi had lost control over the Malabar region. And lastly, Veer Vallal of the Hoysal dynasty virtually declared himself independent. So there is a lot of disruptive forces around. Several indiscipline also appeared in the different parts of the administrative system. The financial structure, as it was built up by Alauddin Khilji, was almost destroyed by his successors, and as a result of this, the treasury became almost empty. Coming to Ghiyasuddin Tughluq and his administrative system. According to Barani, Ghiyasuddin could improve the situation by taking charge with strong hands. He introduced a land revenue system following a middle path. He avoided the ruthlessness of Alauddin Khilji as well as the indiscipline of Mubarak Shah. He attempted to solve the problem in 3 stages. Number 1, through the Muqtada. Number 2, through the Muqaddams. And number 3, through the peasants. The Sultan pursued a policy whereby land revenue would be collected from the peasants without them being unnecessarily pressurized. Being penniless would not motivate the peasants to cultivate land and to produce more crops. So what Ghiyasuddin Tughluq wanted was that he introduced a new system of sharecropping which is known as Hukumi Hasil. Within this system, in case of increased productions, the peasants would get a fair share of the produce. Barani praised this system. It can be deduced from Barani's account that 1/10 of the produce was settled as tax approximately. Ghiyasuddin instructed the revenue officials to encourage extension of cultivation and to increase the tax gradually. There was a clear instruction to the Muqtas and the provincial officials that the peasants should not be overpressurized or tortured. Alauddin had reduced the position of the village headman or the Muqaddam to that of a common peasant. Ghiyasuddin, however, reversed this system and he restored the traditional rights of the village headman to collect the taxes. Their lands and their grazing fields were exempted from taxes. However, they were warned that they should not become rebels with affluence. In this new system, there was no place for ijara. However, sometimes some adjustments had to be made because several administrators got their posts on the condition of ijara. Tariq-e-Firuz Shahi of Barani gives details about the rules for the Muqtas and the provincial officials. The officials could demand another 0.5% over their salaries, but if they collected more from the peasants, they were severely punished. The change in the ijara system increased the responsibility of the Muqtas and the provincials. The pressure of taxation on the peasants decreased and various measures were employed for their protection. Coming to the army and the expeditions led by Ghiyasuddin Tughluq. Ghiyasuddin, being a good warrior, revived the army organization within 2 years. Financial and other benefits were provided to the troops to keep them satisfied and happy. Ghiyasuddin attempted to recover the lost prestige of the Sultanate by sending expeditions to the border area. Meanwhile, Prataparudra Deva of Devagiri had declared independence and had stopped paying tributes. A huge force under Ghiyasuddin's eldest son, Tughluq Khan, who was later known as Muhammad bin Tughluq, was sent to Devagiri to establish control over the Hindu kingdom and as well as to collect a large quantity of wealth from there. After the failure of the first attempt, Ghiyasuddin sent reinforcements and this time Tughluq Khan was successful. He established the control of the Delhi Sultanate over Warangal and Telangana. Several conspiracies against Tughluq Khan created difficulties for him, as a large contingent of soldiers rebelled and some of the generals also conspired with Prataparudradeva. However, within a short while, Tughluq Khan could bring the situation under his control. Telangana came directly under Delhi administration and the name of the capital Warangal was changed to Sultanpur. All the attacks on Hindus or Hindu temples, however, were forbidden. Expedition to Orissa, which was the next in line for Tughluq Khan, against the Orissan king Bhanudeva II was now organized. Bhanudeva had helped Prataparudra. In 1324, Tughluq Khan left Warangal and marched along the seashore to occupy Rajamundri. Bhanudeva was defeated in a fierce battle and a large number of war elephants and enormous wealth was collected from there and sent to Delhi. An inscription dated September 1324 at Rajamundri mentions Tughluq Khan's victory over the Orissan king Bhanudeva II. Ghiyasuddin now turned his attention towards Bengal. The lawlessness and internal factional fighting within Bengal drew his attention. In 1324-25 CE, placing Delhi in charge of his eldest son Tughluq Khan, Ghiyasuddin led his army towards the east. He reached Lucknowti in Bengal and captured it after a series of battles. The Sultan also attacked Tughluq on his way back from Bengal to Delhi. After the conquest of Tughluq, the Sultan, that is Ghiyasuddin Tughluq, he marched towards Tughlaqabad. Tughlaqabad was the city that he had established before proceeding towards the east. Before entering the city, arrangements were made for his rest on a wooden platform. After the meal was over, the wooden platform suddenly collapsed, killing Ghiyasuddin Tughluq and some of his close associates. Historians of the later medieval period are divided in their opinion regarding this incident. On the basis of several interpretations, one can draw the conclusion that there are specific two views. On one hand, it is considered that Muhammad bin Tughluq or Tughluq Khan, that was the name which he followed at that point of time, he conspired against his father and he made the structure of the wooden platform in such a way that it would collapse and kill Ghiyasuddin Tughluq. Ibn Battuta stated that the trouble between the father and the son had started since the time of the Devagiri expedition. However, Ibn Battuta also mentions the fact that the wooden platform was built as per the direction of Ghiyasuddin Tughluq and not Tughluq Khan or Muhammad bin Tughluq. On the other hand, Isami, however, points out that while Tughluq Khan showed enough respect towards his father, but the platform was built as per the direction of Tughluq Khan. So it is really difficult to draw a definite conclusion as to the fact whether this was a conspiracy or a simple accident. Muhammad bin Tughluq ascended the throne uncontested after Ghiyasuddin Tughluq was killed in this accident. Ghiyasuddin Tughluq did not claim any aristocratic ancestry. He crossed many hurdles before coming to power or becoming the supreme ruler. He introduced several beneficial reforms, followed a middle path, and shared good relationship with his Hindu subjects. Efficiency of the officers and not their ancestry was given importance by Ghiyasuddin Tughluq. He could be considered as quite a liberal ruler in different aspects of running the administrative system. Now coming to Muhammad bin Tughluq, who ruled from 1324 to 1351 CE. The reign of Muhammad bin Tughluq has often been judged as a turning point in the history of the Delhi Sultanate. The Sultanate had touched a peak point of glory during this period, and this was again followed by a series of disruptive revolts which in turn shook the foundation of the Sultanate. Muhammad bin Tughluq dreamt of an administrative and political unity of India by pursuing his ambitious projects. There had been a lot of controversy regarding his rule. In the opinion of Professor Aniruddha Rai, his rule of 26 years was as wonderful as it was tragic. Estimated sometimes as an unrealistic idealist or sometimes as an oppressive ruler, Muhammad bin Tughluq had a vast scholarship as well as expertise in the battlefield. Deeply read in religion and philosophy, he conversed not only with the Muslim mystics but also with the Hindu yogis and the Jain saints. As he shared a critical and an open mind, the orthodox theologians accused him of being a rationalist, to whom religious belief was not simply a matter of faith. Unfortunately, he was inclined to hasty and impatient decisions, as a result of which many of his experiments failed, and at the end, tragedy struck. Ascendancy to throne of Muhammad bin Tughluq. After observing 40 days of mourning at Tughlaqabad, he came to Delhi and ascended the throne at Daulat Khana. One can learn from Barani and Isami that when the Sultan reached the Badaun gate, there were showers of gold and silver coins which were collected by people at large, coming from different sections of the society. And there is a joyous atmosphere everywhere. However, this joyous atmosphere did not last long. Muhammad bin Tughluq took the title of Abul Mujahidi. He assured his subjects to follow the path of his father, and he also followed the traditions of appointing officials in different capacities and bestowed honors and titles to those who were considered to be a core ruling group. Coming to the Mongol invasion during the time of Muhammad bin Tughluq, Chagatai Khan Tarmashirin invaded India during the rule of Muhammad bin Tughluq at an early date. There is a lot of controversy regarding the course of events and the after effects of Tarmashirin's invasion. Barani is completely silent about it. The Mongols were, however, ultimately defeated and pushed back. Muhammad bin Tughluq occupied Kalanaur and Peshawar, and his troops plundered the Mongol areas. The khutbah was read both at Kalanaur and Peshawar in the Sultan's name. These two posts were strengthened to prevent future Mongol invasion. In fact, Muhammad bin Tughluq did not face much of trouble from the Mongols during the rest of his rule. After repulsing the attack of the Mongols, he planned to occupy Khorasan and Iran. For this, he organized a huge army, but the conditions ultimately did not work out in his favor. The project was abandoned and the huge army was disbanded. His next scheme was the transfer of capital. There had been a lot of controversy among historians regarding Muhammad bin Tughluq's project to set up a capital at Devagiri and to focus on the entire administration from Devagiri. Barani stated that the Sultan's choice was guided by the fact that Devagiri was situated at the center of his empire, being equidistant from Bengal, Gujarat and Delhi. However, geographically, Barani's point cannot be supported entirely. Devagiri was definitely a perfect center for establishing control over the rest of southern India. The Sultan's decision became highly controversial as there were several among his close associates who did not want to support this transfer of capital. Earlier, Muhammad bin Tughluq had spent a considerable time at Devagiri. His attempt to bring the entire South India under the control of Delhi had created serious political difficulties. The people were not prepared to accept an alien rule. There were rebellions, of which the most serious one was led by the Sultan's cousin Gurshas. To make Devagiri the second capital, the Sultan ordered several officers and their close associates, along with so many Sufi saints, to shift to Devagiri, which was now renamed Daulatabad. There was considerable official pressure as well as liberal grants to make the entire process of transfer work. There was, however, no attempt to shift the entire population of Delhi to Daulatabad. Coins continued to be minted at Delhi while the Sultan resided at Daulatabad. However, since the transfer took place during summer, many people died from exhaustion while going through this tedious journey. Although a long road has been built and rest houses were also constructed along the way, but it did not reduce the suffering of the people who were compelled to take this journey. Those who ultimately reached the new capital were unhappy to leave Delhi residence where they had spent generations. There is a good deal of discontent, and after a couple of years, the plan was abandoned. Muhammad bin Tughluq realized that it was equally difficult to control northern India from Daulatabad as it was difficult to control the southern part of the subcontinent from Delhi. However, there were certain benefits of this project too. The system of communication improved, bringing the northern part of the subcontinent and the southern part closer. This also created the opportunity of spreading in the Deccan the cultural, the religious and the social ideas which the Turks had already introduced in the northern part of India. The next project on which Muhammad bin Tughluq focused was the idea of token currency. There was a shortage of silver in the world in the 14th century. In this context, modeled on the basis of the Chinese example of Kublai Khan, who had successfully experimented with paper currency, Muhammad bin Tughluq issued copper coins which had the same value as the silver tonka. The concept of token currency was new in India, and it was not easy to make the trading community as well as the common people to accept it. The government was unable to control the people from forging new coins, and soon the new copper coins began to be greatly devalued in the markets. Finally, like his transfer of capital project, here too the Sultan had to withdraw the token currency, and he was forced to exchange silver pieces for the new currency. According to Barani, the forged currency or the forged coins were confiscated and heaped up in front of the fort, and it remained there like that for years to come. The failure of these two experiments damaged the prestige of the Sultanate, and also it caused huge wastage of money. However, when Ibn Battuta came to Delhi in 1333 CE, he could not identify any harmful after effects of these two failed experiments. Next, Muhammad bin Tughluq focused on agrarian reforms and its connection with the nobility. He introduced a number of measures to improve agriculture. Most of such measures were tried out in the Doab region. Although, like Alauddin, he did not reduce the status of the Khats and the Muqaddams so that to that of the ordinary cultivators, but at the same time he wanted a fair share of the land revenue. However, the way in which the land revenue was increased was excessive and arbitrary, and it caused a crisis for the cultivators. Especially the Doab region at this point of time was passing through famine, which was followed by plague. Although the reforms backfired, but the Sultan had set up a separate department called Diwani Amiri Kohi, focusing on improvement of agriculture and extension of agriculture. A model farm was built up. Later on, the policy advocated for improvement of agriculture was taken up by Firuz Shah and even more vigorously by the Mughal Emperor Akbar. Muhammad bin Tughluq was the notable Delhi Sultan who had a comprehensive literary, religious, and philosophical education. He was even a good calligrapher. Tolerant in religious matters, he maintained diplomatic relationships with far-off countries like Iran, Egypt, and China. Ibn Battuta visited India during this period as a Qazi, and he worked in Delhi for 8 years. Muhammad bin Tughluq's experiments perhaps earned him much of disfavor from his nobles also, but definitely he was a more liberal ruler and was perhaps a little ahead of his time. Firuz Shah Tughluq ruled from 1351 to 1358 CE. He faced the problem of disintegration of the Delhi Sultanate on his accession. He was not a natural heir of Muhammad bin Tughluq, but he was chosen by the nobles. Therefore, he followed a policy of appeasement and tried to keep the nobles, the army, as well as the theologians in good humor in order to ensure their support. Coming to the military expeditions followed by Firuz Shah Tughluq. To combat the problem of fragmentation of the center of power, Firuz Tughluq concentrated on safeguarding the stakeholders of the Sultanate in northern India rather than focusing on towards Deccan or further south. He led 2 campaigns in Bengal, but both the campaigns failed and Bengal no longer remained under Sultanate. Firuz Shah proceeded against Jajnagar in Orissa, desecrated the temples there and collected a rich plunder, but he did not attempt to bring entire Orissa under his control. A campaign against Kangra was also organized. He had to lead a prolonged campaign to overpower the rebellions which were taking place in Gujarat at this point of time. Apart from this, he forced the ruler of Nagarkot to pay him tribute. He collected 1300 Sanskrit manuscripts from Jalamukhi temple and got them translated in Persian by Aziruddin Khan, Dalal-e Firuz Shahi. Coming to Firuz Shah's administrative structure. Firuz Shah Tughluq was definitely not a brilliant military leader. However, his reign witnessed a period of peace and development. He followed the advice of the ulemas in running the administration. He levied taxes according to Islamic law. All the non-Muslims had to bear the burden of the jizya. He did not share the liberal outlook of Muhammad bin Tughluq towards the Hindus. Firuz Shah wanted the state under him to be purely an Islamic state. Firuz Tughluq abolished the practice of torturing the nobles and the other officials if any balance was found against them during the audit of the accounts of the Iqta. Not only was the Iqtadari system revived, but it was made hereditary. In the long run, however, it reduced the chances of competent men getting higher positions and at the same time made the ruler depend on a narrow oligarchy. The principle of heredity was also extended to the army as well. Recruitment in the army was done on the condition of hereditary factors. A number of welfare projects were launched too during this period. Irrigation tax or sharb was imposed, but at the same time a separate department of public works was built. Several canals were constructed. For example, the canal from Sirsa to Hansi, Satluj to Hansi, 200 kilometers long, and Yamuna to Hisar. Fruit gardens were around the... A number of welfare projects were launched too. Irrigation tax or sharb was imposed, but at the same time, a separate department of public works was also built. Canals were constructed, for example, the canal from Sirsa to Hansi. Secondly, the canal from Satluj to Hansi, 200 kilometers long, and from Jamuna to Hisar. Fruit gardens were built up around Delhi and they yielded rich revenue. Kharaz, zakat and khams were some of the important taxes. Royal factories called karkhanas were built where the slaves were employed who were working under Diwani Banda or the Department of Slaves. Firuz Shah banned inhuman punishments and torture like chopping off body parts for offences. A new department of charity was built up which is known as Diwani Khairat. This was set up for taking care of orphans and widows. Dowries were provided for the marriage of the daughters of poor families. Hospitals were built for free treatment of the poor. Firuz Shah Tughluq believed that the state was a benevolent institution and the assertion of this ideology was quite remarkable during the medieval times. Finally, I would come to the monumental pillar of Firuz Shah Tughluq. The Tughluq sultans of 14th century ushered in a period of innovative architectural patronage. According to W.J. McKibben, no monuments epitomize the spirit of this age more than the group of pillars installed by Firuz Shah at different important sites associated with his time. India's Islamic architecture bears close affinities to the building traditions of Eastern Iranian world. The Tughluq dynasty followed nearly a century and a half of Islamic rule and building in northern India. Each of the Tughluq sultans were patrons of architecture, but Firuz Shah Tughluq was most prolific and best remembered. About 300 new towns were built during his period. Old monuments such as Jama Masjid and Qutub Minar were repaired. Among the important towns were Firozabad near Red Fort in Delhi, Hisar and Jaunpur. Ashokan pillars were bought from Meerut and Topara and they were shifted to Delhi. The most impressive remains of such architecture are found in Delhi, where a congregational mosque still stands next to Firuz Shah's now ruined palace. He has been held in high esteem as a beneficent patron and archetypal builder. The pious intention of the builder was expressed through the construction of several madrasas and water tanks. Coming to the conclusion of the Tughluq period, one can argue that Firuz Shah Tughlaq's death was followed again by a period of disintegration. Actually, from 1388 to 1398, this was a decade of disintegration. There is a struggle for power between the sultans and the nobles. Secondly, the rebellions of the slaves occurred, which again created a crisis for the later rulers. Weakness of the Delhi Sultanates, as a third point, was made even worse by Timur's invasion and the sack of Delhi in 1398 CE. Finally, the dangers facing a weak government became evidently clear in the post-Firuz Shahi period. Thank you.